Welcome to Data Cloud Now, where we are dedicated to illustrating how the Data Cloud is pushing the possible forward each and every day. In this episode, we're exploring the impact it's having within the public sector. This affects all of us, whether you realize it or not. We sit down with both Deloitte and Snowflake to not only discuss the current landscape, but also what's next. Wait, let's stop there for a moment. For those of you unfamiliar with what the Data Cloud is, no problem. At its core, it's a global network where thousands of organizations mobilize data with near unlimited scale, concurrency, and performance. And while we're at it, let's define the public sector as well. While we don't have time to name all of them, let's start with a few that come to mind. Law enforcement, courts, public transportations, libraries, museums, among many others. Now that we're all on the same page, let's get into it. A modern data approach has been a focus for the US government for years, and in 2018, the federal data strategy, defined by the president's management agenda, defined a long-term vision for modernizing the federal government. The PMA stipulated that data, accountability, and transparency initiatives must provide the tools to deliver visibly better results to the public and improve accountability to taxpayers for sound fiscal stewardship and mission results. All right, enough from me. I had the opportunity to sit down with Deloitte's Monica McEwing, Managing Director who leads Deloitte's Government Principal and AI and Data Alliances leader. Let's hear her perspective on the current state of things within the public sector.
What we're seeing in public sector in particular, probably the most transformational time in data that I've seen in my 25 years of supporting the public sector market, really driven by the pandemic. And I think it's no different in commercial industry. Sure. The public sector agencies are typically a little bit behind commercial companies. However, they're recognizing the critical importance of getting data to the cloud. And the pandemic drove that because all of a sudden when they wanted to track the outbreak of COVID and they didn't have the technology to do it, there was a strong recognition that, like you said with the business drivers, strong recognition that they needed to have data in the cloud to share it more easily, agency to agency, and to scale into the more advanced AI and analytics with the data volumes that are increasing as they are.
I'm sure I'm like most of you. I had no idea that the real-time challenges faced by small and large companies alike are also felt within the public sector. I had so many questions about how the public sector is thinking about this transition to the cloud. Luckily, I had the opportunity to sit down with Jeff Frazier, Head of Global Public Sector at Snowflake, to get his take on the current state of things. Let's jump into that combo.
Every morning, about 800 million people around the world wake up and they go off to serve, protect, or educate within their communities. So we take that very humbly here, and we are very committed to that purpose. So I just met with an Australian delegation and talking with them what we're hearing. Right. And talking with them and said, in the many years that I've been serving in the public sector, I have never seen a technology category move this fast. And as such, with that speed comes some complexity and it comes some expectation. And so what we're seeing is the emergence of this data era. And if you think about it, and we were all agreeing with the Australians, it was really fun. And if you think about it, it's driven by really three major forces. First one is advances in technology that reduce cost and they simplify the desire to modernize. There's a big push and a big movement in modernization. Second are the citizens' expectation, which are like consumer-like expectations of anything as a service. Right. And so that trend is coming and forcing the change. And the third is the fast-moving cross-cloud government data sharing. So the tectonic shift that we're seeing in the category is going to be around data sharing with their mission partners and their ecosystem partners. And that's the big shift that we're seeing, and it's driven by that force.
Whoa, did you hear that? I never thought about the scale of the workforce behind the public sector. Nearly 800 million people wake up and go off to serve and protect. Well, Jeff started with a global example. Let's bring it back stateside and cover a similar point Monica shared previously in relation to COVID-19, but also show how US agencies, aided by the Data Cloud, are adapting to an ever-changing landscape.
State of California, when they had COVID-19, and when they responded to that and the shock that took place in California, we saw the state of California was able to implement and look at citizens and connect need with vaccinations. They were able to track and look into supply chains the way they never had.
We're talking about real-time examples happening right now.
And I think the real key issue on that was that it took weeks to implement. It was a modern data architecture, took weeks to implement, and it normally would take you months, not years.
Right.
So I'm seeing that across all categories in government. I'm like CMS, the Centers for Medicaid and Medicare. If you look at what they did, they were able to reduce the shock to the system. So
I find it fascinating to hear how the state of California and their implementation of the data cloud were able to analyze the progression and impact of COVID-19 across the state's population, and the approach higher education institutions are utilizing the data cloud to improve student outcomes. Should we hear more? We've just scratched the surface. Let's hear what the near term looks like and what public agencies need to do to make this shift.
Look, there's a coming revolution here, honestly, and you got to look at it in this way. There is a revolution in converting time, cost, and from legacy system into rapid and responsive and iterative services. It's really important to talk about the speed in which and the latency reduction in which that takes place. So this is a shift we're seeing. Look, at its core, the data cloud, it drives cost efficiency, simplicity, and extends a horizon of knowledge. And that's the real key piece here. And so when I look at a modern data architecture in our data cloud, this is what drives value. It drives public value. And so therefore, if agencies and their ecosystem partners and the institutions are able to capture that, they need to rethink a few things. And what we're seeing, and they need to rethink their data sharing governance and their covenants. Mm-hmm. So the first is information sharing agreements, the legal agreements among the agencies themselves. Mm-hmm. That's where it starts. That's where it starts, right? That's where the innovation takes place. The second would be around consent rights and privacy, and rethink those and and data ownership and what that looks like. And then the third is to rethink the classification types of data. So national governments can share with national governments in ways that they hadn't previously, and what they all aspire to do.
There is a lot to unpack here, but not to fear, we're in this together. This is exciting stuff, because as public sector institutions and agencies make this shift, you and I, the everyday citizens, are impacted positively. The shift to the cloud isn't just about companies having a bottom line impact with their clients. This shift impacts all of us. We've heard from Monica and Jeff on the current state of affairs, but now let's get into Deloitte's perspective on the future. We welcome a new face into the program, Frank Farrell, Principal and AI and Data Alliance Leader at Deloitte. Enjoy.
I think for me, I mentioned it already, but I think that the clean rooms, being able to share data in a governed manner so that agencies can start to provide citizen services more effectively. Imagine a use case, for example, if there's a child support entity that's trying to match a child with the best foster care system. There's a bunch of data that goes into making that decision.
Right.
And if they can do that faster and get a child into the right foster care home faster, huge.
I mean, talk about delivering impact.
Yes. Yeah. Yes, but there's a lot of regulation that comes with how they share that data, and the clean rooms provide the technology to do it.
And Frank, from your perspective.
So Monica mentioned the ecosystem.
Right.
We actually call this a constellation. So what we found is that Snowflake actually is an anchoring part of a next generation architecture. So we've been partners, Deloitte has been partners with Snowflake for about 3 years. And we were excited about that partnership, but what we're seeing is that these other new partners are starting to emerge around it, whether it's Dataiku for AI ML, Matillion for data integration, ThoughtSpot for business intelligence. These are born in the cloud, AI-infused partners, and we're really interested in as to where that goes in the market and what potential that's going to provide for our joint customers.
The power of the network and community making this happen is great to see. As we have discussed throughout this episode, still early stages as it relates to the public sector and the data cloud, but everyday citizens are already seeing the positive impacts through everyday situations. Speaking of future, Jeff had some thoughts as well.
In the future, the government service delivery won't be an either-or dichotomy.
Right.
What it'll be is, that's the pressure. So that's the pressure that comes to government saying, hey, look, I need you to give this a service because we have a need. And that's always been one way and reciprocal way. What you're going to see in the future, this is a huge shift. And what you're going to see in the future is think of the government as an orchestrator of services.
Interesting.
Think of that. So think of it as the government is the largest producer and consumer of data in the world. And so if you think about them at the center of this and how they can orchestrate, just like a marketplace, a natural marketplace, if you think about that, there's so much untapped value in that. So you're going to see, utilizing a modern data cloud architecture, you're going to see citizens become at the center of designing and delivering those services. So it looks like this because it reduces feuds, it reduces vendor lock, it reduces costs. But if you look at it, our promise and our vision of a modern data experience is to enable the citizens through the government data orchestration to design and deliver by, with, and for people, as opposed to the current way in which the government to and for. So fundamentally, citizens will be at the center of designing the services and delivering on those services.
I find that analogy incredibly helpful. Thinking about the government as an orchestrator of services where the citizens are at the center of it. And to see how the data cloud will help this transformative process play out in real time is remarkable. I'd like to thank Monica, Frank, and Jeff for their thoughtful insights. I'm Ryan Green with Data Cloud Now. I'll see you next time, where we'll take on another topic and explore the impact the data cloud is having. See you soon.